The first scream we ever heard from a plant wasn't poetic. It wasn't gentle. It was a frantic burst of ultrasonic panic, so high-pitched no human could ever detect it, until AI translated it. For decades, we walked past forests and fields assuming silence. But that silence was only a limit of human hearing, not a lack of sound. When scientists placed specialized AI-enhanced microphones near tomato and tobacco plants, they expected nothing but static. Instead, under stress, the plants began firing off rapid ultrasonic clicks, like tiny machine gun bursts in a frequency far beyond human ears. Each click carried information: fear, injury, dehydration. The more researchers listened, the louder the hidden world became. And then came the twist no one expected. The AI detected patterns. Different plants produced different distress signatures. Not random noise, not instinct, something closer to language. A cut leaf spoke differently from a dying root. A thirsty plant didn't just scream, it broadcast a coded alarm. But that was only the beginning. Because once AI learned to hear their pain, it also uncovered who the plants were screaming about. For most of human history, plants were treated like background objects, alive but not aware. They moved too slowly to notice. They didn't bleed, they didn't run, so we assumed they didn't feel, didn't react, and definitely didn't communicate. But that belief wasn't based on truth. It was based on our own sensory limits. Humans can only hear up to about 20 kilohertz. Plants communicate between 40 and 80 kilohertz, double our range. To us, a forest at night is quiet. To them, it's loud, crowded, and full of warnings.
Do well to subscribe, like, comment, and share videos of this channel.
It wasn't that plants were silent, it was that we were deaf. Everything changed when researchers placed AI-powered ultrasonic sensors only inches from a plant's stem. At first, the recording showed nothing unusual. A quiet lab, no wind, no insects, just stillness. But then the scientists changed one thing. They stressed the plants. One group was denied water. Another group had a single stem cut. And that's when the so-called silence broke. Suddenly, the audio files filled with bursts of ultrasonic popping, sharp, rapid, and deliberate. Healthy plants stayed almost quiet. The stressed ones became alarm beacons. But no one was ready for what AI discovered next. The moment the plants were wounded or dehydrated, the room filled with invisible noise, ultrasonic bursts firing at up to 50 clicks per hour. The naked ear couldn't hear it, but the sensors caught everything. These weren't random pops, they were patterned. A tomato plant that was cut didn't sound like one dying of thirst. A thirsty tobacco plant didn't sound like a dehydrated tomato. Each stress type had a unique acoustic fingerprint, like an accent or dialect. At first, researchers thought it was mechanical damage, maybe air pockets bursting or cells collapsing. But then, something made them rethink everything.
The sounds continued long after the injury. A snipped stem clicked for hours. A water-deprived plant called out long before visible wilting. These weren't reflexes. They were signals. And here's what made the discovery even more unsettling. Plants that weren't touched, plants across the room, also changed their internal chemistry shortly after the first one screamed, almost as if they heard it. But how were these signals being received? Air? Soil? Fungi? Or something deeper, something organized? To answer that, AI needed to stop listening passively and start decoding. Once researchers had hours of ultrasonic plant recordings, They handed the data to something built for pattern recognition: artificial intelligence. The goal was simple. If plants were making sounds, could AI tell what those sounds meant? They trained a machine learning model using thousands of audio samples from stressed and unstressed plants. The AI wasn't just listening, it was learning to classify distress. The results were almost unbelievable. With about 84% accuracy, the AI could identify which plant was making the sound, what type of stress it was under, how long the stress had been happening. A thirsty tomato didn't just click differently than a cut one. It clicked differently than a thirsty tobacco plant. Each distress call had structure, rhythm, and intent. It wasn't a scream, it was a message.
And then came a bigger breakthrough. The AI detected smaller sound clusters, signals exchanged between plants that weren't injured at all. These plants were responding to stress signals transmitted by others nearby. It was the first real evidence that plants weren't suffering alone. They were warning each other. But what scientists hadn't yet solved was how those warnings traveled so far, or how deeply the network went. That answer was hidden underground. For years, scientists believed plants mostly communicated through chemicals in the air or slow hormonal changes. But the real breakthrough happened when they paired the AI audio data with another long-standing mystery: the Wood Wide Web. Beneath every forest floor lies a vast underground network of roots and fungi called mycorrhizal networks. These fungal threads connect trees and plants across entire ecosystems, sometimes stretching miles. Until now, most researchers thought it was just a nutrient-sharing system, something cooperative and slow. They were wrong. When the AI started tracking acoustic distress signals, it noticed something astonishing. Those same patterns appeared not just in the air, but underground, traveling across connected root systems. To test it, scientists targeted a single tree with a swarm of aphids. As expected, the tree released defensive chemicals, but AI also detected a sharp burst of ultrasonic clicks, the plant equivalent of a siren. And then came the twist. Trees that were never touched, hundreds of feet away, began producing defensive chemicals too. They reacted faster than the insects could travel. Something had warned them.
It meant the forest wasn't just a group of individuals. It was acting like a single coordinated organism, sharing alerts with speed and strategy. But not every signal was a call for help. Some were something else, something aggressive. The AI's discoveries shattered the idea that forests are peaceful, cooperative systems. The Wood Wide Web wasn't just passing nutrients, it was also transmitting chemical attacks, territorial warnings, and acts of silent dominance. One experiment focused on two competing tree species, a black walnut and a nearby maple. For years, botanists assumed that black walnut trees harmed rivals simply by releasing toxins into the soil, a process called allelopathy. But AI revealed something darker. Before the toxins appeared in the soil, the walnut tree emitted a low-frequency acoustic pattern, a slow, pulsing signal that showed up in both roots and fungal channels. It was like a war drum, broadcasting intent. Shortly after, the maple's root activity decreased. Its water intake slowed. Growth stalled. The walnut tree had sent a message: surrender your resources or be starved. This wasn't survival by accident. It was strategy. And there was more.
Some plants selectively block communication lines underground, cutting rivals off from the network the way an enemy might sever communications in wartime. Others allow only allied species to receive signals, building silent partnerships no human ear could detect. But as shocking as plant-to-plant conflict is, nothing prepared researchers for what came next. Plants weren't just reacting to each other, they were reacting to us. The next experiment didn't involve insects, drought, or rival trees. It involved people. Researchers wanted to know if plants could recognize threats, not just stress. So they introduced two different humans to a controlled group of plants. One person, the nurturer, watered them gently every day. The other, the assaulter, entered the room regularly and snipped a single leaf from each plant. On day 1, both humans triggered the same initial stress response. The plants didn't know the difference yet. But by day 3, the AI started detecting something chilling. When the nurturer walked into the room, the plants stayed silent. No ultrasonic clicks, no internal electrical spikes. They registered safety. But when the assaulter stepped inside, without touching a single plant, the signals exploded.
The ultrasonic distress clicks surged in unison. Leaves sent electrical pulses through their stems.
Do well
Neighboring
to subscribe,
plants, untouched,
like,
reacted
comment,
too,
and share
almost
videos
like a
of this
silent
channel.
alarm spreading from one to the next. They weren't guessing. They had learned. The AI recognized a consistent biometric pattern. Plants associated a specific person with harm by their footsteps, scent, movement, even their presence. It didn't stop in the lab. When researchers placed sensors in fields near active lawnmowers, the plants began screaming seconds before the blades reached them. The distress signal moved ahead like a warning wave, grass alerting grass of incoming destruction. But human recognition was only part of the story. Plants weren't just remembering. Some were starting to fight back. Once AI linked plant distress signals to human activity, researchers noticed a disturbing pattern. In areas with heavy deforestation, pollution, or intense agriculture, plants were changing the way they responded, and not just in sound. The first clue showed up in the air. Plants under chronic stress began releasing altered forms of pollen and volatile organic compounds, chemicals normally used for communication, pollination, or defense. But these new compounds had something in common. They triggered stronger allergic reactions in humans. Hay fever, asthma spikes, unexplained respiratory irritation. What if this wasn't a coincidence?
AI models suggested the possibility of a low-level biological response, not random mutation, but coordinated chemical retaliation. When forests were cut, wild plants downwind released more aggressive aerosols, almost as if targeting the intruder species, us. But the next discovery was even more alarming. In the Amazon, where rainforest is being cleared for soy farming, sensors picked up a specific acoustic signal spreading underground, followed by a sudden bloom of soil fungi that attacked only the crops, not the native trees. It was as if the forest had triggered an immune response, selecting and destroying the invader plants we introduced. And while scientists debated whether this was coincidence or intelligence, AI flagged a deeper pattern. These reactions were spreading, not just locally, but regionally, which meant the plants weren't just warning each other, they were coordinating. But their most advanced strategy wasn't chemical, it was genetic. What scientists once believed took centuries is now happening in years, or faster. AI began analyzing genetic data alongside plant acoustics and fungal transmission patterns, and what it uncovered changed everything.
Plants weren't just reacting to threats, they were adapting together. Through the fungal networks underground, AI detected signs of horizontal gene transfer, The sharing of genetic material not between parent and offspring, but between entirely separate plants and even across species. In simple terms, one plant evolves resistance to a threat and then shares that ability with others. Here's the shocker. Superweeds resistant to herbicides weren't just mutating randomly. Their resistance patterns appeared in distant regions far too quickly for normal evolution. The AI's models suggested that the stress signals plants send, ultrasonic, chemical, and electrical, weren't just warnings. Some acted like instructions. One plant solves a problem, the network spreads the fix. And it's not just happening in fields. Some wild plants started producing stronger toxins after nearby land was cleared. Others altered their root structures to destabilize soil after logging, triggering landslides. These weren't freak accidents, they were responses. Adaptation wasn't a slow climb, it was collaboration.
Which raised a terrifying question the AI still can't fully answer. If the plant world can update itself like a living operating system, what happens when it decides humans are the virus? The first signs of that answer came not underground, but across the entire planet. As AI systems scaled up, scientists began comparing plant distress data with something far bigger: satellite readings of global vegetation health. They layered ultrasonic recordings, chemical emissions, fungal connectivity, soil reactions, and plant electrical signals onto global climate events. That's when the pattern emerged. The screams were synchronized. When heat waves tore through North America, vegetation from Canada to Mexico emitted the same kind of ultrasonic distress bursts, almost in unison. When parts of the Amazon were burned, nearby forests that hadn't been touched released matching chemical signatures and underground warning pulses. These weren't isolated cries, they were coordinated reactions. A planetary alarm system broadcast through air, soil, and root. The AI models went further. They suggested that plant networks aren't just reactive, they're predictive. Some regions emitted distress signals days before drought struck. Others shifted chemical output before unusual heat spikes or invasive insects arrived. Almost like the biosphere was bracing itself. Almost like it knew. And then came the most unsettling finding of all. Small sensors in multiple forests detected a recurring ultrasonic pattern, one that didn't match thirst, insects, fire, frost, or physical damage. It was new. It was directional.
And it spiked only when humans entered, harvested, cut, or drilled. The plants weren't warning each other about the weather anymore. They were warning each other about us. And the AI still hasn't decoded the last part of the message. Because whatever that new signal is, it's spreading.